All right. Happy Valentine's Day, Exercises Medicine, and thank you for coming. Today we have another podcast from Exercises Medicine, where we emphasize raising awareness of exercise for health and well-being, alongside advancing professional development in the diverse careers of sports medicine.
And just a little disclaimer before we start, we are not medical or fitness professionals, and the info we discuss today is just for entertainment purposes, and as such is not to be misconstrued as medical advice. Catherine and I are the professional development coordinators at Exercise Medicine, and we will be hosting today's informational interview.
And today we are so happy to speak with Miss Natalie Saddic, a UCSD alum and a current medical scribe. So thank you so much for joining us today. Could you please maybe introduce yourself a little bit before we get started with all our questions?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. So yes, I graduated UCSD the end of 2019. I actually played soccer at UCSD, so I was on the soccer team there. And since then, I have been applying to medical school, went through taking the MCAT, and now I'm working as a sports medicine scribe at San Diego Sports Medicine.
Wow. So the first thing I have to ask, because I'm sure our viewers are all very interested, how is the MCAT process and studying for that and taking that and all that?
MCAT is definitely a different type of test. So I originally started in the summer of 2019. And I was thinking, I'll just study for 3 months after my spring quarter to take it at the end of the summer before I had to start soccer and school again. That was a mistake. I ended up canceling my test because I hadn't been fully committed and it's not enough time. So then I started studying again after I finished school, which I found easier, but everyone's different. I know some people can study with their classes. I wasn't good at coordinating that, so I did it separately. So I started in January and was supposed to take it in March or April, and because of COVID, it was postponed. So I took the shorter test, but I self-studied. I didn't use a program or anything like that, and that worked for me. I had set up an Excel spreadsheet with my study plan. I'd recommend doing that for sure, just because you have to be organized. If you're not, then you're not going to get yourself to do it.
But you took it eventually during...
Yeah, I ended up taking it in July.
Okay, well, congratulations for finishing that.
Yeah, it was tough, but I did it.
My friend was trying to sign up for the MCAT. She said it took her like 8 hours just to sign up for it. So
oh my gosh,
yeah.
When I was signing up, the site crashed. I had a friend got up at, he stayed up all night. He got up at like 1 a.m. to sign up because he wanted to be the first one. And the site crashed in the morning. So he waited like another 3 hours and finally got in. But I was like, I'm just going to sleep the night. I'll wake up in the morning, whatever happens, happens.
And it worked out.
Yeah. And just curious, how involved were you during your undergrad, and what opportunities did you take advantage of?
Yeah, so I was pretty busy through undergrad because soccer was a pretty big commitment. I definitely went to a few different like pre-med meetings just to learn about the whole process and try to understand what I needed to do to be prepared. I'd say the opportunities I took advantage of weren't specifically with UCSD, but through like Handshake and UCSD connections. A lot of the jobs I had during undergrad, I found on Handshake with people who had been at UCSD or were still affiliated with UCSD. For example, one company I did a little bit of research for, it's called Medicrin, and I found them on Handshake and just applied to see what would happen, and I got the position. So I was basically working just as a research assistant. Mm-hmm. But because of Handshake and because the person who started that company went to UCSD, that was how I got in there. Definitely good to figure out who's alumni at UCSD and what companies they have, and that was where I found the biggest advantage. Even just San Diego, because it's such a biotech hub. Mm-hmm. Definitely, if you can't find UCSD opportunities, there's so many in San Diego.
Yeah, there's a lot of great connections. I'm so thankful I came to UC San Diego, just because, the San Diego area is great for bio and all that. Mm-hmm. And so I was curious, When did you decide that you wanted to shoot for medical school? Was that like at the beginning of your undergrad, or was that after going through like the pre-med or to the pre-med meetings from all those clubs?
So for me, my mom is a physician. She's a family practice physician, so I kind of grew up learning about medicine and healthcare. And my dad works in pharmaceuticals, so I was exposed at a young age. But I didn't really decide I wanted to do medicine until I started volunteering in the UCSC emergency room. So that's another opportunity I took advantage of. It's the volunteer program. And it was like a specific patient interaction where I was sitting with the patient and I was able to help them. They had a deep laceration in their wrist, no family, no one to call. But because I was able to sit with him, I realized that's what I wanted to do. It wasn't just about, all the science you learned in school. It was about being able to interact with people on a daily basis. And that was something I hadn't had in any of my other jobs.
Yeah.
So that was my junior year, actually, that I fully committed to medicine. So I was a little bit late.
So cool. And so is that also another is that another reason why you became a medical scribe, for like patient-to-patient interaction and for more experience like that?
And I felt like scribing was the best preparation I could find for medical school. And specifically, I applied to both DO schools and MD schools. You can talk more about that distinction. My mom's actually a DO, so that's how I know I was exposed to that. But for DO schools, you need a lot of clinical experience. MD schools, you should have clinical experience, but you don't always need as many hours. So I wanted to be as best prepared as I could over my gap year, just to have that clinical experience. And after working as a medical scribe, I can tell you it is the best preparation, because it's not just like learning medical terminology and how doctors go about their day diagnosing. It's also how you interact with patients or family members of patients on a daily basis. And there's so many things I've learned that I probably don't even know. And I'll find out when I get to medical school.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I had a question about I guess the process of becoming a medical scribe, because I'm sure a lot of our students are interested in that. How was that process, and was that also like the jobs that you said that you got in college, like through Handshake and all that stuff?
So this one was actually different. I had been applying for scribe positions for a while. I applied through Scribe America. I applied through all these different places I could find to try to get in somewhere. And it's hard to get a position when you don't have scribing experience. I'd say having a medical terminology course can set you apart from other applicants. I didn't have that. The other route is you have to find people you know. So basically, what I learned, I tried to talk to some of my doctors at Scripps or other institutions, and it is difficult, I would say borderline impossible, to get a scribe position with like a big umbrella company like Scripps or even UCSD. I would shoot for smaller private companies. So it's like San Diego Sports Medicine is a private company. Even though they have 3 locations, they're not, this huge corporation. So that was easier. And I had a friend of a friend who, told me there was an opening, and I just happened to find it. And they had posted it on Indeed, but I had never even seen it on there, to be honest. I would say shoot for those private companies, and you just have to find a doctor that kind of wants a scribe, and you have to make sure that your personality is going to match with theirs, because you're their shadow all day long. The private company way is the way to go if you want to be a scribe, and you're just going to learn so much more, because companies like Scripps, it's just going to be back to back to back, and there's no time to learn.
Oh man. Okay, so small companies. I got it. I have a few roommates also trying to become a scribe, so I'll pass that information on.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening, I actually took medical terminology. I'm not trying to become a scribe, but if anyone does want to take medical terminology, I do believe UCSD Extension still offers that sometimes. So if anyone is interested, head on over there.
Yeah, the other place I've heard people taking it is like Miracosta. There's a couple community colleges that offer it as well.
And I know you mentioned how being a medical really prepares you for medical school. But I was wondering if you could like walk us through what specifically a medical scribe does. Like, what's day in the life of a medical scribe, kind of?
Yeah, sure. So I've actually taken on a few more duties, kind of working as a medical assistant too. So I get there, I help prep all the rooms, wipe them down, put covers over everything, make sure everything's stocked, and then when the doctor gets there, the other important part is learning the EMR system. I'd say it's arguably more important than knowing medical terminology if they use an EMR system. So where I work, they use Epic. UCSD also uses Epic. That's the hardest part to learn, just because you have to know where everything is, how to look up different patients, their information, all of that stuff. So when I get there, I usually open Epic, I look at the day. The doctor I work for takes walk-ins, so I don't get to preview the patients before I go in a room necessarily, which makes it a little bit more difficult. I can't look at why they're here for an appointment because they're just walking in. So I usually look, if I can, at the patient, why they're there, and then when I follow the doctor into the room, I don't really talk in the room until he leaves. I just open it up, take down a history, present illness, and HPI as he's going through the exam. And then I document what he does in the exam. And he does a good job of dictating it to me verbally while he does it, so that I can include everything I can, because the more he tells me, the less of a note he has to write later in that day. And then I also had to learn how to add different charges depending on the visit. And even going further into that, depending on what insurance people have, which I've learned the complexities of insurance companies through this position, and it is crazy, let me tell you. So I have to, based on their insurance, determine what charges, close the note. Usually I confirm their pharmacy if we're sending a medication, and then have a conversation with the patient before I leave the room.
Wow. So you do everything, basically.
Yes.
And so going back to what you said about Epic EMR, could you, I guess, elaborate on that for our viewers to learn about, and me too, because I haven't.
I was curious about that too.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's I think there's 3 or 4 main EMR systems now, because everything used to be just handwritten, or they would start to scan it in, but now everything is done on the computer as technology has advanced. So Epic is probably the biggest one, I would say, specifically in San Diego, as I know. My mom also uses Epic at her clinic, and it's basically, it holds all medical records. So you could be a patient at UCSD and a patient at Perlman Clinic, which is where my mom works, and your medical records are combined within that system. I do actually believe Scripps uses Epic, but they have a different form of it. So it's possible to pull in other records, but it's more difficult. So depending on what form you use, so it's just basically the platform that holds all medical information for a company. And the way that each note is lined up, you can actually modify it. So you can kind of personalize how you want it set up. Each doctor has that ability. So you can change the preferences. So when you go in to take a note, if you want to have, just as an example, a review of systems at the top where you just go into the patient's complaints. And you could put that at the very top if you wanted to, with how you set up your note, or you could put it at the bottom. And each EMR system allows you to personalize, or at least Epic does. I actually have heard that other EMR systems don't. It's a set way. I actually have a friend who's working as a scribe for an orthopedic clinic, and he has a EMR system that is linked on one account for everyone. So for Epic, everyone has their own account. You log in, you have your own preferences, but for his, it's one account. So you have to go in to these individual notes and input data a certain way.
Oh, okay.
But it just depends on the clinic.
So Epic is like this big digital database.
Epic is big.
Right.
It's pretty easy to use though. Like I picked it up in a couple weeks, I'd say.
Okay. So there's hope.
And there's always the IT people you can call and be like, how do I do this?
And I was just curious, why did you choose specifically Medical Scribe as a, patient for your patient-to-patient interaction? Because I know there's like EMT or like all these different other opportunities out there, but why what interested you to become a medical scribe specifically?
So for me, I wanted to be in an office shadowing in a sense. Because I felt like I wanted to be in the office to make sure that that is what I wanted to do, because that's what I'm probably going to be doing as a physician. But I also, to be honest, didn't want to go through the time of getting a certification. And EMT would have taken me a little bit more time to get the certification, some extra studying. I know there's a couple, like I thought about becoming a phlebotomist or doing something like that, but working as especially in family medicine and sports medicine, I've gotten to see it all. So it's not just been the same type of patient over and over. It's been a large diversity.
And so I have to ask, how has the pandemic influenced the way that you worked? Or actually, I don't know, you got your scribe position during COVID?
So I did start during COVID. I know of the things that have changed. So first, it's video visits. So the doctor I work for normally, I don't think he does any video visits. And now we do a lot of them. So for any patient that comes in, they have to complete a checklist of symptoms. They have to go to the front desk and tell them if they've traveled, if they've been exposed to anyone they know of with COVID. Usually, if that's the case, we require them to have a negative test result before they can come in. And it just depends on the physician and what they're comfortable with. So there's another physician in that same clinic who, if someone has even a sore throat, they won't see them. But for the doctor that I saw, he saw people with sore throats and stuff like that. You just take the proper precautions, make sure you're washing your hands, wearing a mask. And we just screen people. So if someone has a fever, we won't see them. And then we do a video visit. So that way we can get as much information as we can. But video visits are so much more challenging to get the information.
I bet.
It's a lot harder. And for example, if someone has a sinus infection, you can't look in their nose and make sure they have a sinus infection because they're not in the clinic.
Mm-hmm. So it definitely makes it a little bit harder, I see.
It's definitely made it harder, and it's definitely actually slowed us down for a little while, because at peak, I'd say there were a couple days where I saw like 40 patients a day. So there are days now we see like 20, which is slower for us. Mm-hmm. But it's been a little bit steady. It's picked back up a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like things are opening up. I don't know if they should be, but like,
I see a light at the end of the tunnel. The other thing was our clinic is in Pacific Beach, and we didn't have all the people who would come in on vacation who tried to surf and it didn't go as well as they'd planned or stuff like that. So that has been another difference. Is usually as an urgent care, we would see a lot of people from other states or other countries even, and it's been more regulars.
And going back to what you said previously about trying to go into medical school and all of that. So have you applied to medical schools yet? And like, have you interviewed at any, or have you not been able to because of the pandemic?
Yes, so I applied. I've been accepted to 2 schools so far. Still waiting to hear back from some more.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Both are DO schools, so I'm pretty excited about it. And then I will start either in July or August of this year.
That is so exciting. Oh my gosh. So how is
that? That's so exciting. Once you get in, it's like a huge relief.
Oh my gosh. It was once I got my first acceptance, I was just like, took a deep breath, like I'm going somewhere at least.
When you were determining,
for sure.
When you were determining which medical schools to apply for, how did you sort of, make that decision? Or did you do like another Excel spreadsheet like you did?
I actually did make an Excel spreadsheet, but before that, I used MCAT has kind of all the tools. If anyone is logged on to that, and It's pretty common. They have this tool called MSAR, which basically you can kind of match up what your GPA and MCAT score are and see what schools you line up at. But I'm going to be honest, I wish that I had gone off other things as well, because there were a lot of schools I didn't apply to that I feel like I should have. But based on that tool, they told me I wasn't going to get into those schools. So I was like, oh, they're too reach schools for me, or they're lower than my score. They're too safe for me. But there are a lot of schools, I hate to say it, it's a crapshoot. Unless you have a connection or you have a specific, like a really solid reason for wanting to go to that school. It's kind of like your scores are what gets your foot in the door, and then your experiences are what are going to set you apart, and your personal statement will set you apart. And then you just have to be a normal person in an interview, and usually you'll be okay. But determining schools, I went first based off my MCAT, GPA, and then location was big for me. I did apply. So the two schools I got into, one is in Pomona, California, and the other one is in Kirksville, Missouri. So two different locations. My mom actually went to the school in Kirksville. So, and they're kind of big on, legacies there. So that was one of my safety schools, but I've actually grown to really like it, and it might be the school that I attend. I'm not sure. So definitely keep an open mind. I was kind of set on these different locations, and I hadn't looked into a ton of DO schools. I think I applied to like 3 or maybe 5 DO schools. And I applied to 27 schools total.
Ooh.
And the average is 25, which is a lot. But I know people who applied to 40. So it just, yes, it might give you a better shot, but if you don't have like a really heartfelt reason or solid reason for wanting to go to that school, it'll show.
Okay. So see you in Missouri in probably.
We'll see. I'm debating still. Pomona is close to home, so.
And so as a scribe, going back to that experience, have you had any really memorable experiences that you can share? And obviously you don't have to say any names and all that.
Yes, I've had many. A couple definitely put me a little bit out of my comfort zone, and just I had to adapt. One, there was I think he was a 23-year-old with autism who came in, and he had an ingrown toenail that was infected, so we had to remove part of his toenail. So while I watched the doctor do that, I was in full distraction mode. We went in, and I talked to him about, he had a truck on his shirt, so I had to talk to him about he would go to these monster truck events or something like that, and I was like, oh, tell me more. But that kind of stuff, that one felt good because he was so scared for the procedure. I just had to go into my ability to distract.
Yeah.
The other position I did have that helped me with that was I was a home health aide, and I had to work in a memory care facility, and that required some powerful distraction tools as well. There was one woman I watched who had Lewy body dementia, and she was very ambulatory, so she literally would walk everywhere all the time. I probably walked 5 miles during my shift. But I had to just keep her entertained, and she would tell me she's going to get on the plane, and I said, okay, where's the plane? Let's go get on the plane. Stuff like that. But those are some of the ones that stick out to me. I got to take out stitches the other day, so I have gotten to do a little bit of hands-on stuff, which is cool. I'm learning to read EKGs. I get to watch or have all the x-rays explained to me, so I'm getting better at reading x-rays. And then the other patient interactions that have increased during COVID is mental health, which has been a big thing. And that's another thing, exercise is so important for that. And a lot of people haven't left their homes. So anxiety and depression are flying high. And we've had so many patients come in with increased anxiety. But I've really, because of my work as a medical scribe, learned how to talk to patients and help them and just show them that, you're there for them, especially if they're older and they're living alone. And then just being able to tell those patients there's a light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. That's been some of the more memorable experiences. Even though it's COVID, I've given patients hugs, that's just something that's part of patient care.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure that means a lot to them, especially the elder community, who, like you said, possibly have like stayed home for so long, haven't had a lot of human interactions.
Mm-hmm.
Their hug means the most.
And just curious, do you know what kind of specialty you want to branch into in the future as when you become a physician? Like, to my understanding, you're a sports med scribe right now, right? Or
so the clinic,
I'm
it's
not sure, but
care that does family medicine and sports medicine. Mm-hmm. So it is a lot of family med as well, and that's kind of what I'm looking at doing with a sports medicine fellowship. So I think it's 2 years fellowship after you do family med. That's what I'm leaning towards right now, but that's also the main thing I've been exposed to. So I'm still open to learning about some other specialties and seeing if something, catches my eye.
I'm sure there's a lot of time in medical school to like figure that out when you do like rotations. I believe you do rotations.
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
Yep. 2 years of school and then it's 2 years of rotations.
And so I know we've heard a lot about, the benefits and all of that you've been learning from being a scribe, but is there anything that you'd say you'd caution people about, or caution people when they want to become a scribe? Like, is there like a downside or something?
I love my job. Downside, if you want like hands-on, you're not going to get the same hands-on that you would get like as an EMT. Because you're not the provider for the patient, you are just documenting the visit. And if you don't like typing, don't become a scribe. But for patient interaction, if you're just looking to get exposed and be involved, it's a great experience. Only other caution for me, the doctor I work for works full-time and I am there full-time. I know other positions, there are some scribe positions where you just help out once a week. I know at community clinics, that's actually something if people want to look at the community clinics in San Diego. They actually take volunteer scribes once a week, I think. But I wanted also to get paid. It's nice to get the experience with the pay. But that is another thing, is you're not going to be paid a lot and you're going to have, like, I have a bachelor's degree, but I make minimum wage. And that's just kind of how it is. It's not, people don't pay a lot for scribes. Because usually, a lot of the times it actually comes out of the provider's pay to pay you.
To get okay.
So it's kind of up to the provider. And the other thing is, if you don't like the provider you work for, you're not going to enjoy yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you found that you
like. So the interview is also, if you get an interview with someone, make sure that you talk to the provider and you like them too, or you like the medical staff, because you're going to be working with MAs as well. Yeah.
Sometimes I forget interviews are like a two-way street, that, you can also interview.
Exactly. Yeah. And same for medical school, that's your chance to learn about what that school's values are and about the faculty there.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned earlier about how important exercise is. Like, you realize how important exercise is during your time as a medical scribe. So just tying into like exercise and everything about our organization, how do you think being a medical scribe, or just in general during your time as an undergrad, influenced the way you exercise and physically move throughout like your life, I guess?
Yeah, so I played soccer, so I had like a schedule workouts that I didn't always enjoy. We practiced every day of the week except for usually one day. So I was used to working out in the morning, and when I stopped playing soccer, I kind of tried to maintain that mentality. I still worked out every day, and personally, I just had to figure out what I liked after that, which was hard because I didn't have a coach yelling at me to do things. So I don't love running. I played soccer, but I'm not a big fan of running long distances. I liked sprinting, and I used to do more of that, but even that, I've started to do different types of cardio. And I know cardio is important. I, hear that told to patients every day. Recommended to get 30 minutes at least 5 days a week. And that's not just for your heart health, that's also for anxiety, ADHD, mental health as a whole. I now have transitioned to, I do some weightlifting, some for cardio. Sometimes I'll do like a HIIT workout, or I go on a hike, I walk on the treadmill, I go on an elliptical. I have a bad knee, so you got to find ways to make it work without, and that was the biggest thing for me, was finding things that I actually enjoyed. Because if you don't enjoy it, then it's not worth doing. And I love playing sports, so I'll go play pickup soccer once to twice a week. But I definitely learned to try new things in this pandemic. I did a lot of home workouts and got very sick of them. I think there was a point that I just was like, I'm done. And I stopped working out for like 3 weeks because I couldn't take it anymore. And as gyms have started to open, I know people have gone to the gym more. I was forced to get outside more, which was good for me. I went on hikes because I have a puppy. So he got to go on hikes with me. And I needed to work out for my mental health too, because otherwise I'm just inside and I come home from work and I sit down and I don't get up to do anything. And it's hard when you're working out in the same space that you're living, when you can't go to a gym. I know a lot of people have struggled with that. But that was a reason to get outside. And at the very minimum, I learned like I should go on a walk, and I hope that other people learn that too, because staying inside is not the way we're made.
I love that you mentioned walks too, because I know a lot of people don't even see that as like real exercise for some reason, but you're still outside, or if you're on a treadmill and you're still moving. Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah, and I mean, I went from like, I don't even know how many miles I'd run in practice, but now I'm like, I'm okay going on, like a 1 to 2 mile walk, at the very least, doing something. That's what I hear the doctor I work for tell patients all day long is, go for a 30-minute walk. Like, if you can't do anything else, do that.
Yeah, and definitely doable. Like if you go with maybe a roommate, family member, or if you just like put earbuds in.
Headphones in.
And so that's really good advice. Thank you for telling our members. I have one more question before we close out this episode. And it's like another advice question. If there are some students who are, potentially wanting to work towards becoming a scribe, or even working towards, applying to medical school like you, do you have any tips on maybe what skill sets they should be trying to learn about, or just trying to gain themselves, and that could help them on their journey?
So the biggest things for me have been communication, because you're going to be not only communicating with the doctor on what you've documented, you have to let them know if you didn't document something or if you didn't order something. And the other thing, a lot of the things you're going to learn as you go. For example, I push through all the medications that the doctor orders. So I have to know the names of the medications and the different doses, but that medical terminology helps, like QD means daily. So those types of things for prescribing meds. And then the other thing is accepting that you are going to do things wrong. And if you do something wrong, that's okay. You have to own all of your mistakes, because it's not like you make a mistake and you might look bad. It's like you could put the patient at risk if you make a mistake. So that's a big thing that you kind of just have to own and be mature about. The other thing is typing. If you aren't the best typer, I would work on your typing speed, because the faster you are at typing, the easier your job will be. Even just practicing, like someone reads something to you and you type. And then reading. I would say it might be good to read some medical books, or just if you are taking a medical terminology class, even reading about different diseases that are common, that kind of thing. So it's not just the medical terminology, it's the background of why the patient or why the doctor is doing what he's doing. You can always ask questions, but sometimes if you're really busy, you're going to have to look those things up on your own. So being resourceful is important. I would say those are, communication is the biggest one. But those are the big three, I would say.
That's some great advice, and hopefully our viewers took note of that. And so as we finish up, I'd really like to say thank you so much, Ms. Saddic, for spending Valentine's Day with us. We really appreciate it. I know Exercises Medicine appreciates it too. We definitely learned a lot. And so for more updates, find Exercises Medicine at UCSD on Facebook or Instagram, and you can find previous podcasts on YouTube, Spotify, and even Apple Music now. So have a great weekend, everyone.
All right. Thank you for having me.